And today, a couple of weeks ago, we started with Come and See, the power of the invitation that Jesus gave and all the early apostles gave. The power of love last week, found in all of this in 1 Thessalonians 1:8, when Paul says to the Thessalonican church, your lives are echoing the Master's word. The news of your faith in God is out. We don't even have to say anything anymore. You are the message. I love that. That's in the devotional Bible, the Message Bible. You know, when he says you are echoing the Master's word, you know what an echo is, right? You ever been somewhere and heard an echo? In a cave or out at night, you'll say something, something, something. And people can hear you. Sometimes I'll have them put on some reverb so I sound like I'm in a coliseum, preaching to a big crowd. Took you a little while there, Austin, but thank you for catching up. I want to sound a little bit like Billy Graham. I want to sound a little bit like Billy Graham. That's the echo of God's word. When people hear and see us, they ought to be hearing what God said and seeing who God is. We're echoing his word. When they see us, they say, there goes a man or woman of God. There goes Jesus wrapped in skin. The highest compliment I've ever gotten is not you dress well. I've gotten that twice. It's not your hair looks great. Hadn't gotten that one very often. It's not, man, your face looks so good. And it certainly isn't your body is to die for. I might die with it, but it ain't to die for. Right? And so that's not what I get. And, oh, your preaching, Pastor, is the best ever I've heard in my life. A couple people hadn't heard much, and they've said that. But it isn't often. It's not, those aren't the things I get excited about. It's not, certainly in Pastor, you're singing, I don't know what means, but I got a good idea. It ain't good. And so, the highest compliment I've ever gotten is when people have said to me, and it's only been a couple of times in my whole life, is, you're like Jesus to me. That's the highest compliment. Because this verse is being fulfilled. I'm echoing who Jesus is. Paul said, we're a reflection of his glory. When people see us, they see the Lord. That's the real question, isn't it? When people see you, what do they see? When people see me, what do they see? You know, on Sunday morning when I'm dressed up and my hair's fixed and I'm preaching my best message, everybody, oh, that's just like Jesus. I don't think Jesus would probably preach it like I would, but it's the way I preach it. And so, you know, and it certainly ain't when I'm driving down the road and somebody cuts me off and I'll leave the rest to your imagination. I don't show any fingers. I don't need to. I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't do that. I don't wave. But I might think some things. And I might even say something. And I don't use any bad words. Occasionally, the S word will slip out. Stupid. Some of y'all were thinking something else. Y'all bad. Y'all bad. I don't use that word. But every now and then I'll say, that was stupid. And my wife, now this is when I know the driving was really bad, because my wife, that's a bad word in our house. When our kids were growing up, we didn't use the word stupid. Well, that's a bad word. We ain't using stupid. But every now and then when she's in the car with me and somebody cuts us off and we like to get killed and 5 other cars about to get killed because somebody's driving, and I say, that's stupid. And she'll say, it sure is. I'm glad she ain't in here to argue with me. Now, that don't happen very often. Usually she'll correct me and say, don't say that. But when it's really bad and it scares her, she agrees with me for a minute, you know? Huh? And so we want our lives, though, to reflect God, to reflect His glory. And that's why when we reach out, we want to do it with the power of connection like He did. We want to do it with the power of love, and we want to do it with the power of compassion. The power of compassion. And today I want to just take a minute that I've got left to give you what that means and show you a picture of Jesus doing this. Compassion, this is my definition. I read multiple definitions, but I want to just give you what I feel compassion is. It's when you're motivated with feeling for someone in their situation enough to help them. Simple definition. And it's pretty close to most classical definitions. It's when you're motivated with feeling, some emotion, empathy, sympathy, for someone in their situation enough to help them. You mean Jesus did that? Read with me. Matthew chapter 9, verse 35 to 37. Matthew chapter 9, verse 35 to 37. Jesus went through all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogue, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, and healing every disease and sickness. When, verse 36, when he saw the crowds, not when he saw the sick folk, not when he saw the ugly folk or the good-looking folk, not when he saw the big folks or the small folks, when he saw the crowds. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them. Because they were harassed, another translation says confused. They were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. That's what drove him to the compassion. It wasn't even the crowd. He went through lots of crowds. But it's what he saw in the crowd. Sometimes we don't see the tree for the forest. There's a large crowd, so we don't see the individual. Jesus would see the crowd, but he sees what's in the crowd. And he saw in the face and in the person of everyone in the crowd, people that were harassed and helpless, confused, sheep without a shepherd. You want to know what sheep without a shepherd is like? You can read some of the gospel accounts where the one runs away, where they go after the one. Or you can go to Psalm 23. We sang the song this morning. And you can go to Psalm 23 and see what it's like to have a good shepherd. And then imagine what it would be like to not have that good shepherd. Flip that script. You can go back and listen to that series of messages I called 23 that I preached a couple of years ago that talks about the sheep and the shepherd and the unique experience they have together. And without the shepherd, the sheep are lost. They will be hurt. They will die young. They will be overwhelmed and overcome. They'll either starve to death, they'll get critters on them, and in them there's one critter that gets up their nose and literally drives them crazy. And they'll run their head up against a rock to try to get it out because they can't. They can't blow their nose. They can't get anything out. And so that thing drives them crazy, and they'll commit sheepicide. I mean, it's true. And if they're not there to keep them clean and sheared if necessary, their wool will get all matty and nasty, and then it gets so heavy, and then when they fall over, a sheep usually, if it falls over on its side, cannot get up on its own, and it will die there. And there's only a window of time you have to get the sheep back up. You read everything you want to know about bad shepherds and look at how the sheep actually live, and you will see what Jesus is seeing when he looks at the crowd. Sheep without a shepherd. He knew what he was talking about when he said that. He sees them as harassed and helpless sheep without a shepherd. When we look at people, we hardly ever see them through his lenses. When we look at people, we see them through our lenses. Do they fit in our crowd? Do they measure up to our standard? Are they people I would get along with or I could relate to? We don't just look at a crowd like Jesus did. Guess who's in the crowd? All kinds of people. Even the priest that would eventually cause the riot to have him executed is in the crowd. His own apostle who would give him the kiss of death in the crowd. Samaritans in the crowd. Everybody, anybody in that region of the world would be in that crowd. But if it don't measure with us or line up with us or come into our circle of understanding and our circle of who we can appreciate and who we like, often we don't see them the way Jesus sees them. So when we get ready to hand out the invitation, we don't need to look just inside our circle. We need to have compassion on the crowd. It doesn't matter who they are. Now, I don't know if you've noticed in the room, let me just give you a quick example. In this room, most people have a hue of a brown or a black skin. And this may confuse you a little bit, but I do not. I'm kind of tan. A little bit of red cells in there with my ethnic background of Creek Indian. And that's who I am. And so we don't look exactly alike. However, that's never stopped me from loving you and believing you're my brother and you're my sister in Christ. And it never will. That's just the color of your skin. We can talk about the language, your first language. It's different than mine. Unless you're from South Georgia. We can talk all day because we understand one another. But some of y'all from up north, I don't know what you're saying. It may be English in Connecticut, but it ain't Southern English. Now, it ain't that bad, right? But that's just an illustration. But it may be Nigerian. It may be Kenyan. It may be Spanish. You know, I know a little bit of Spanish. Dios te bendiga. Gracias, señora. Señorita. See, I know a little bit. It may be some French or Creole. It could be all kind of, I wouldn't know. But the fact that we have different languages never stopped me from loving you and never will. And some of you are taller than me, not many. Some of you are shorter than me. Some of you are bigger than me. Some of you are smaller than me. Some of you look better than me, not many. And none of that has ever stopped me from loving you and never will. Because Jesus looks at the crowd and sees the individual. And he knows right then the individual is either a sheep in his fold or it's a lost little sheep. Harassed, helpless, with no shepherd. If we as the church of Jesus Christ would learn to see what Jesus sees, it would change our world. I'm convinced of it. I'm going to say something. Woo. Let me say this. Listen to this. You may not know this, but we are in an election year. I heard some moans and groans. Right, I get it. I get it. I'm moaning and groaning with you. However, no matter where you vote or what you think, it's not going to stop me from loving you and never will. Why do you use that, Pastor? Because there are people that ain't going to be sheep in our family that we got to love. And if the church will be the church of Jesus Christ, we'll look into the crowd no matter what color they vote. And we're going to love them. And we're going to pull them in and we're going to pull them close and we're going to be brothers and sisters in Christ. So let me help you, friend. There ain't no president ever died for you on the cross. There ain't no government that's ever set you free. There ain't no people and no body and no Congress that's ever gave you a law that's going to give you what you need for life and liberty. There's only one name, and his name is Jesus. And if I'm going to vote for somebody every day with every word and every ounce I've got, it's going to be Jesus. I'm going to love people. I don't care who they are and where they're from and what they're going on. When we give out the good news, we need to love them the same way. Miss Bernice needs a miracle today. She's been battling cancer, and the last treatment plan is not going well. You know what I know right now? She needs a miracle. But I'll never forget her telling me, Pastor, the reason I came to the tab, very first time, I was working at an industry here in town in Atlanta, Atlanta Constitution-Journal. And there was a man that came and invited me to come to the tab. And that man did not look like me. He was a man and I was a woman. He was white and I was not, she said. And I thought to myself, if he's got enough courage, because he just told her, the pastor told us to invite people that don't look like us. That was Brother Brumbelow. And she thought to herself, if that little white guy, wasn't me because I ain't little, that little white guy had enough courage to invite me to his church, I'm going to go visit. She had no idea what the church looked like, who was coming, had no idea, but he invited her, and she came. And those that have been around a while know the rest of the story. She became a volunteer and then came on staff and really helped navigate a lot in this church. And is one of my personal heroes. And I appreciate that story because it challenged me to never look at how they look, but look at who they are. It challenges me to continue to look at who they are. Are they sheep without a shepherd? Or are they already in the fold? Now, I'm kind of old school, and I'm kind of old school Pentecost and old school preacher, and I just say, I look at them and thinking, are they going to heaven or are they going to hell? If they go into heaven, I just want to encourage them. If they go into hell, I want to reach them. Are you with me? You may not believe in heaven and hell, but you might want to. Because you're going to go one or two places. And you want to make sure which one. And so is your family. And so are your friends. And that's why we reach. And Jesus looked at the crowds. In fact, he went on to say in verse 37, listen to this. Then he said to the disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. There are very few people that will give the good news. There are very few people that invite people to know Christ. Very few. Don't blow it. You got one life to live. Live it like you should. Make the difference for the kingdom. I want to finish up with this. Listen, Jesus' compassion brought good news. It had an eternal perspective. Look at what it said. It says, when he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them. Right before that, it tells that he proclaimed the good news of the kingdom, healing every disease and sickness. He never met them that he didn't proclaim the kingdom of good news. Not right and wrong, good news. Let Jesus work out the right and wrong in their life. Share the good news with them. Share the good news with them. Listen, Jesus' compassion brings good news to the harassed and the helpless. The harassed or confused could be torn, someone that's torn from something. It's attacked from outside forces. We know it. They don't even know what's happening. We can know it because we're in relationship. We read the Word. We understand what God is doing. They're being attacked from an outside force who is trying to deceive them, steal them, kill them, and destroy them, and they don't even know it. It's the sheep that has no shepherd that's just getting destroyed and doesn't even realize it. Just think that's the way life is because nobody's shown them any different. We should show them different. We should show them the good news. We should tell our God story, what God's doing and what God has done in our life. It's the helpless. It's those who can't help themselves. It's that sheep that cannot help himself. It's a sheep that doesn't realize you can't live by the law, who tries to achieve eternity by themselves, who tries to deliver or heal themselves or collectively provide for themselves. But the truth is, the only way to heaven is Jesus. No other way to get there. They're harassed and helpless and don't. They're sheep without a shepherd, meaning they wander aimlessly. They're wandering away from safety. They're wandering away from shelter. They're wandering away from their source of life. Once they eat up the grass and there's no more in that pasture, they don't know where the other pastures are, but the shepherd does. They're sheep without a shepherd. And listen, can I just... You're welcome to say you should meet our pastor, whatever. But I am not the good shepherd. I'm the under shepherd. Introduce them to the good shepherd. You're welcome to use my name. You're welcome to tell them about me. That's fine. But don't stop there. Don't make that the ceiling. No, the ceiling is unlimited because it's in Jesus. He is the good shepherd. When you tell them about the shepherd, tell them about the shepherd. Because he's the only one that can give them everything they need for life and godliness. Look at this. Not only was it harassed and helpless in Matthew 14, it was the hurting. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them and healed the sick. He has compassion for the hurting. He has compassion for the harassed, the helpless, sheep without a shepherd, and the hurting. He also has compassion for the hungry. When Jesus said in verse 32 of Matthew 15, Jesus called his disciples to him and said, I have compassion on these people. They have already been with me for 3 days and have nothing to eat. I do not want to send them away hungry, or they may collapse on the way. He has compassion for the hungry. I'm like super glad about that because I stay hungry a lot. Right? We all do. And so these things that are human frailties, Jesus has compassion for them. The helpless, the hurting, the hungry, the harassed, the sheep without the shepherd, and the hidden or the blind. Matthew 20, verse 34, Jesus had compassion on them and touched their eyes, and immediately they received their sight and followed him, 2 blind men, hidden from everything else in the world. Can't see anything physically, and at that point, not spiritually either. Hidden. He has a compassion for the harassed and the helpless, the sheep without the shepherd, the hurting, the hungry, and the hidden or blind. And I don't even have time, but I'll just list them for you. There are many other times it says he has compassion, or you see him acting compassionately for those who are hollow on the inside, for those who are hopeless, for those who are heathen, for those who are hated, for the hundreds around him, for the hostile, for the harlot, for the hellbound, for the hostage, and yes, even the hypocrite. He has a compassion for them all. We could take any one of these terms, and almost all of us would have one or two of these terms that we wouldn't appreciate. We'd have compassion for a lot of them, but I ain't sure about that hostile person. I'm not sure about the harlot. I'm not sure about the hypocrite. Right? Now I'm getting to where we live. Because we categorize our compassion. Can't categorize your compassion. Jesus saw the crowd, everybody in the crowd, and he had compassion on each one because they were harassed and helpless, sheep without a shepherd. He didn't say, well, I have compassion on everybody except the hostile people, the people that are violent. No, he had compassion on them. He had compassion on everybody but the harlot. We know that's not true. He went to a woman at a well. Had 6 or 7 fellas. And the one she was with wasn't even her husband. Right? What about the hypocrite? Now, he talked pretty straight to the hypocrites, but he also had compassion for them. He loved them. He died for them. He died for them. They're not going to change any of these dynamics that make them this label until they surrender to Jesus. Let me help you. Maybe you've forgotten. You didn't change any of yours until you surrendered to Jesus. I didn't change any of mine until I surrendered to Jesus. And then Jesus started working on me. Aren't you glad? Aren't you glad? Jesus working on me, making me what I ought to be. Huh? Anybody remember that song? The reason I sing songs like that is because I didn't grow up in Sunday school. I didn't get to learn them. Every now and then I remember one that I heard a kid sing, and I'll start singing it. And I sing it without the musicians, so you won't know whether I'm sharp or flat. Jesus saw the crowd. All those folks were in the crowd. All those folks are in the crowd. Can I tell you what Jesus has compassion for? He has a heart for the harvest. He has a heart for the harvest. He didn't leave heaven and come and dwell as a man and die on the cross and rise from the dead to make a better church. He did it to redeem mankind. The harvest. The harvest. He did it for you. He did it for me. He did it for us. He did it for everyone in Atlanta. Everyone in Georgia, everyone in the prisons, everyone in the neighborhood, everyone everywhere. That's who he did it for. Now, it's up to them where they receive that. But he did it for them nonetheless. Jesus died on the cross for the harvest, the hypocrite, the hostage, the hellbound, the harlot, the hostile, the hundreds, the hated, the heathen, the hopeless, the hollow, the hidden, the hungry, the hurting, the helpless, and the harassed. He died for them all. Didn't leave any of them out. That's who he has compassion on. Jesus has a heart for the harvest. How big is the opportunity for us to bring good news? I don't know. The last data I seen, somewhere between 6 and 7 million people in the metro. That's a pretty big field. That's white, ready to harvest. He said, just ain't many people that'll do it. Just not many people that'll do it. What will you do over the next 2 weeks? For Palm Sunday, for Good Friday, for Easter Sunday, what will you do? You know, I've already talked to Erica. I've already talked to a couple of young men. I just keep looking for people I can talk to. I'm going to go back and try to find Erica this week. I know where she works. You may see Pastor Mike Tedder at Tabernacle Church arrested for stalking. Not going to really stalk her, but I'm going back to her work, right? Making sure she's coming at Easter, right? Because I'm just going to keep going back in polite, appropriate ways. I'm going to keep going back because I'm believing for Erica's soul. I called her former youth pastor. We talked about her. He told me, he filled me in. He told me what she was like when she was a teenager. The successes and the challenges. Getting a little background story. Not to impress her, to win her. To win her in the kingdom. Her mama, her teenage son, her little child, to win them all. I don't think there should be anybody left out of the equation. I can't pray for all the children of the tab and not share Jesus with all the children of the tab. So, what are you going to do? What an opportunity we have to bring good news. And here's how we can be an answer to Jesus' prayer. Jesus prayed and told us to pray. Gave us instruction to pray for more laborers to go into the harvest field and bring the harvest in. We can be an answer to his prayer by praying for those souls. We can be an answer to his prayer by going ourselves. We can be an answer to his prayer by sharing the good news with the power of the invitation, the power of his love, the power of compassion, loving all people to life in Christ by all possible means. Paul said, I become all things to all men that by all possible means I might save some. Meaning you're not going to get them all, but you're not going to get any if you don't try. You know, you'll only catch the number of fish you fish for. If you don't fish, you ain't catching no fish. Did y'all know that? It ain't rocket science. You can get your fishing pole and go sit in your tub all day long. And you ain't catching no fish. You got to go to where the fish are, get your equipment, get out there and catch the fish where the fish are. There ain't no fish in your tub. If they are, they're little rubber duckies and plastic ones. You can't eat those. Don't try. Go to where the fish are. Fish for souls. He said, I'll make you a fisher of men. Father, thank you for your word.
Hey everyone, this is Pastor Melissa, the online pastor here at the Tabernacle. We wanted to say thank you so much for watching our online service here on our YouTube channel. If you need any prayer for anything, whether that be for healing, breakthrough, or a response to salvation, feel free to email us at prayer@thetabonline.com. We would love to connect with you in that way. And if you want any more additional information about our church, you can visit us at thetabonline.com.